the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our family and our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again.
Welcome to our monthly AAA podcast, Affinity, Allie, and Annette on the road to good storytelling with your host, Allie Spooner and Annette Maury.
Welcome. I'm Allie Spooner and I write with Affinity Rainbow Books. I've now got over 40 titles, published titles, and I touch on many genres from romance to paranormal. Thanks primarily to Miss Heidi Benhammer, I now have 16 audiobooks produced, and we're working on several more. Lately, I have tried to reteach myself some things. I'm horrible about keeping stuff short, so I've been working on some short stories and standalone books. I think the queen of the Affinity series. I write several series that I just, you get so attached to your folks, it's hard to let go. So I'm trying to do some more standalone. One of the goals of our podcast is that we hope that you will enjoy them first and have an opportunity today to meet some new narrators or to learn more about narrators that aren't new to you, but you can get some more information on. We appreciate your support and we invite you to visit Affinity Rainbow Publications and audible.com to check out our books.
And I'm Annette Maury, and also an author with Affinity Rainbow Publications. I'm pretty sure I've settled into a brand, although lately I have been really concentrate on writing series books. Same because I want to keep up with Allie. I mean, Allie is the queen of series books. But actually I have gone back to my roots of where I originally said, I'm never going to write a series. And look at me, I've got now 12 in the organization series. So I've gone back to standalone books because I didn't want to get typecast into anything. But I also feel like I have a lot to learn. And, short stories are hard for me as well. We just wrote a novella and I thought it was going to end up being, short novella. It's 32,000 words or something. Neither one of us are short time people. But I'm also very appreciative of the narrators who really bring our stories to life. And one of the things that I think is most important to me is that there are some individuals who can't read ebooks. And so narration is super, super important. And so we're really, really trying to get as many of our Affinity books out on audio as possible so that those individuals out there can enjoy that.
All right. So each month for our podcast, we invite special guests or guests today to join us as we discuss various topics of interest to writers and readers. We'll invite our guests to do a short reading. Today, it will be a short video clip, and then follow with questions on the featured topic, while encouraging them to do at least one giveaway to our audience. And Lisa and Annette and I are working on several different things that we can put together to get some audio codes to make sure that, folks know that they're out there and we're willing to share.
And this month, we're talking to our wonderful narrators. Not all were able to join us today, so there are some other really cool narrators that at some point in time, maybe we can have some conversations with, but we have 4 with us right now, and we're very excited about that. We are also going to ask them, instead of doing a reading, we're going to ask them to share a very short clip. And so we have 1-minute clips from each of our wonderful narrators, and we'll be introducing you to them.
Okay. Following our podcast, we'll upload a newly created YouTube channel and hope you consider subscribing so you never miss a future podcast.
All right. So it's my absolute honor and pleasure to invite one of our very first narrators with Affinity, Heidi Benhammer. And Heidi Benhammer is a former college professor, a classically trained soprano, which we've used, voice teacher, and now audiobook narrator. During the worldwide lockdown, Heidi decided to take the chance and begin her newest career in narrating and producing audiobooks. With 59 completed audiobooks and several more in the works, she has narrated books ranging from lesbian fiction to horror, World War II fiction, and a Holocaust memoir.
So, without further ado, you're on, Heidi. Take it away.
Hello. All right, this is a clip from The Next Generation by Annette, and I chose this clip because the worlds have met with the old guard and the new guard, and it's really fun to see the old guard and dealing with their kids wanting to do their same job. So they're I wanted to find like a shoot 'em up chase scene, but there's usually a lot of swearing in those, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah. I was on Facebook at one point in time, just a little offshoot here, and people were talking about overused words, and I said, I'm just going to go there. One of my overused words is probably so,
my favorite word to say.
Yeah,
it's a great
here we
word.
go. Here's the 1 minute clip on The Next Generation.
Val scanned the grounds, looking for anything that captured her entry onto the estate. I know it's a lot to ask, but I'll also need you to wipe anything that might already exist. Duh, I know that, Joy answered. Okay, you're clear. I jammed all the signals. By the time you finish, I'll have erased anything that might have captured your ninja routine, Aunt Val. Making her way quickly to the sprawling estate, she cupped her hands against various windows until she found 4 vehicles and an oversized garage. Pulling her lockpick kit from the bag slung around her shoulder, she was inside in under a minute. Val quickly swapped out the 2 plates she'd pulled from their rentals, then relocked the door. She wasn't overly thrilled with scaling the wall again, but didn't want to take the time to find the gate. Val had completed the entire operation in less than 10 minutes. Not bad for an old gal, she thought. The only snafu was the man who'd taken a shot. Eliminating both men would not solve her problem. Otherwise, she wouldn't have hesitated. The universe would simply have to provide for them as they'd always done before. She would have to update Shar and Tony.
Great. I love that. I love that clip. Thanks for choosing that. And thanks for choosing The Next Generation. Anything else you want to add, Heidi, before we go on to Danielle?
I was just thinking about, I was just looking over the questions, that you had sent. And one of the stories that I was talking with another author on Facebook, because I'm friends with a lot of the authors on Facebook. One of the funny things we talked about was, she was texting, asking, how I feel about reading sex scenes. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I'm alone in my little room up in the middle of my house. And she was saying, as the author, as she writes them and she goes, and I sort of feel myself doing that as well. I'm like, anyone there? So that's the fun part of reading some of those scenes. And
that's so funny.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Well, you'll be happy to know that the first book that I've ever done, a fade to black, that has absolutely no eyes wide open scenes, is Love Hacks, the next one that you're going to be doing. So you don't have to do any sex scenes.
Oh.
All right.
Allie? All right. Danielle grew up in Wyomissing, Pennsylvania. I hope I got that right. Where she spent years immersed in theater, improv, and performing as a vocalist. Danielle has spent the last 5 years volunteering as a patient advocate and educator for people with complex chronic illnesses, and is surprised and delighted to now be acting and working again. She began narrating audiobooks after finding success in recording her poetry. As an avid listener of audiobooks and lover of performing, the transition into narration came naturally. When Danielle is not recording, you can find her in the kitchen playing the entire cast of Hamilton as she bakes. We expect cookies in the future, okay?
Fair.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. So my clip is from a book called Strength Within by Mia Barnes, and It is the moment where our protagonist, Sammy, is meeting her first love. They're on the beach and teenagers, and it's a coming of age story in a lot of ways. So wanted to start out with her as a younger person before moving into her being older, which is why I chose this clip.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is that I didn't recognize, I helped Mia with the book and I'm like, what book is this from? And it's because you chose when she was a younger person, I didn't remember it. And I'm like, what book is this? And Allie said, it's from Strength Within. And it's so funny because I had worked with Mia for like months on this book. So I should have known it in and out, and I didn't. So here we go. So
when I was almost at my favorite spot, the wind caught my cap and it went flying down the beach. I was about to take off running after it when I saw a dark-haired girl come out of nowhere and grab it. She came toward me, and I walked toward her. We got about 5 feet apart when our eyes locked, and I felt a flutter in my stomach. It was a weird feeling, one I hadn't felt before. I stood there paralyzed, unaware if I was still breathing, and she didn't look away. What was happening? I felt different things, like her eyes were talking to me, and then a rush of panic because I wasn't sure how to react. Finally, I looked away, breaking eye contact. I felt myself exhale. Then I pointed to my cap and said, "Thank you for saving that." "No problem," she said as she handed it to me. After an awkward moment of silence, I said, "My name is Sarah, by the way." I looked at her, and she was smiling.
nice.
Very good.
It was awesome. Anything you want to add to that, Danielle?
I don't think so. Are we going to be asking questions more later, or would you prefer us to?
No, we are. We'll be
Okay.
asking questions later. Definitely.
Cool. Okay. Okay.
All right. So it's my pleasure to introduce Susan Knight. Susan Knight started as that voice on the radio with the crazy laugh. Now she is the voice of commercials, audiobooks, e-learning, training, videos, and perhaps even the voice you hear when you are on hold. She believes that the key to surviving the tough times is to have a mind that is always ready to move forward, learn new things, and be willing to adapt. Communication is connection, and that is where her heart thrives, and she loves the nuances of how it works.
All right, you're up next, Susan.
Okay, so the piece I chose, I find choosing audio very, very difficult. I shall not lie. From Allie's book, South of Heaven, which I'm working on right now, I chose a piece. I'm also a hopeless romantic, so I chose something that reflected those beginning stages of, oh, you like me? Oh, I like you. We have chemistry. And because the book is set on a trawler for shrimp, I thought that was a nice place to put it as they're out there together. So that was the piece I chose.
Good job.
Great. Okay, so here we go. We're going to play South of Heaven now.
That has to provide you more protection, especially from rogue waves. Yes, there's that. And it's less far to swim or paddle if anything goes amiss, she answered with a serious face. I prefer the comfort of seeing land in bad weather. Lindsay gazed out to the south, at the clear skies and brilliant sprinkle of stars. It's hard to believe that just a few 100 miles south, mayhem is on its way. It seems so peaceful out tonight. A comfortable silence had fallen between them. They relaxed against the bench, and Kendra's hand was resting on Lindsay's thigh. The warmth of their bodies pressed close together brought her a sense of contentment. Her eyes were growing heavy, and she felt Kendra stand and stretch. I'm going to call it a night. Sleep well, my friend. You too, Captain. Lindsay enjoyed the cool night for several more minutes before retiring to her berth for the night. The gentle swaying of the boat rocked her to sleep within minutes.
I like the feeling of that one.
Yeah, good job.
Anything else you want to add, Susan?
I know we got a lot of questions coming, so yeah, we can chit chat after that. And yeah, I'm just thrilled to be here. So thank you very much.
Great.
All right.
I want to welcome Clark. Clark
Hello.
the Shark. I love that. So I'm glad you were able to join us. How's your puppy dog doing?
She's okay. She's still at the vet, but I can go get her in about an hour and she's gonna be okay.
Good, good, good.
Thank you
Okay.
for letting me hop on.
Very happy to hear that.
Yeah, great news. All right, Kelly Kilber is an Air Force brat who grew up all over the world, crossing both the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans several times before she was 10. An artist in several mediums, nothing has arrested Kelly's attention quite like audio work. A lifelong storyteller, she discovered audio as a great way to give her stories depth and scope, creating soundscapes for friends and the occasional art patron. Narration has given her a fantastic way to grow her craft while also allowing her to pursue it as a career to support her creative endeavors.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And would you like to give us a little intro on your clip, Kelly?
Yes. So this is 23 Miles by Renee McKenzie. And this clip that I sent you is the two protagonists, Katie and Shay, kind of have a confrontation. And I love it because Katie is over her mind with a crush over Shay, and Shay is confronting Katie about some parts about her past.
Wonderful.
Talia had worked herself into a nervous knot by the time she made it to the bar that night. She was so upset she couldn't eat dinner before going out, and she knew she wouldn't be able to eat when she got there. Her nerves wouldn't let her. The woman at the door waved her through. Talia had been there enough over the last several months that she guessed she was officially considered a regular. Talia turned toward the dance floor when she heard Kate call out, "Elliot, wait." But Shay Elliott wasn't waiting. She was making a beeline right for her. Talia was scared and excited all at once. "Outside, now," Shay barked. Talia almost tripped trying to keep up with her. Damn, and no drink yet either. What the hell were you thinking? That wasn't what she was expecting to hear. Maybe, "Quit stalking me, loser," but not that. "What do you mean?" Talia asked, her voice quivering. "Do you have any idea how bad it's going to look for me when they look into your story? Seriously, what were you thinking?" "You have to retract your statement. You aren't even a credible witness, for crying out loud," Shay said. All Talia could think to utter was, "What?" "Come on. Kate told me about your problems with not telling the truth. She told me about your nickname, Liarhead Lisher." "Lizard. It's Liarhead Lizard." Her face was so hot she expected to break out into hives. "You're going to judge me based on some adolescent crap years ago? I'm sorry, but I don't believe you were sitting outside my house 2 nights in a row. And when the FBI proves that you lied, it's going to make me look bad. They're going to think I put you up to it. They're going to check out my story and you will be off the hook. They aren't going to give a shit if I told lies for attention when I was younger." "Stop it," Shay said through clenched teeth. "Stop the crap, and don't try to help anymore, okay?" Talia could feel her fists clenching and unclenching by her side. She knew she should say screw it and leave, but she couldn't stop herself. "So, Shay Elliott, did you know that it's your neighbor to the right letting her dog shit in your yard without cleaning it up? Huh? How about the neighbor on the other side of you? Did you know she entertains another neighbor after dark?" Shay looked confused and said nothing. "Am I a freak stalking you? Yes. Am I a liar? No, not in this case anyway. Not about where you were those nights. Oh, and you ordered a pizza from Cal's on Saturday night." So if it's all the same to you, I won't be retracting my statement to the FBI. And maybe one day, when you pull your head out of your ass, you'll thank me for coming forward. I'm so sorry. I got the names mixed up on the characters. It's Talia and Shay, and I can totally say the introduction.
Hey, no problem. See, that's the thing. We all are human, so we love that. Love that. Anything else you want to correct on that, Kelly?
The clip is between Talia and Shay having a confrontation. That's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
good deal. All right, so I am so happy that you were able to join us, Clark, so that we could have you answer questions as well. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce you, and then you can tell us a little bit about the clip that you chose. Clark Coder, I hope I pronounced that correctly, is a
Nicely
guitarist,
done.
bassist, and vocalist primarily in punk bands. All right. She is also a seasoned leather worker and single mother of 5 fur babies, a dachshund, and 4 cats. All right. Her love for audiobooks and desire to use her voice to bring stories to audio life led her to build a sound booth in her Somerville, Massachusetts apartment, which she affectionately calls her house. Thus began her journey into narration. While she is a relative newcomer to audiobook narration, she spends countless hours in her house honing her craft. Welcome.
Welcome. Clark, you're up next.
Now, am I playing the clip or are you folks playing the clip?
Now, Annette's going to play it. If there's anything you want to introduce about Mother's Wish.
Yeah.
So this scene is it's kind of an enemies to lovers plot. With the rest of the book has kind of a thriller mystery suspense element to it, which is great. I really enjoyed the book. But this scene is kind of Lucy and Cameron are the 2 main characters, and they've just kind of met. And Lucy has been estranged from her mother for about 15 years and is back at her family's estate. But she's like, no one trusts each other really. So Lucy's kind of confronting Cameron and making some accusations.
Yes. All right. Here we go.
Lucy took a step back, but kept eye contact. I know you're after the inheritance. She bit her lip, instantly regretting her retort, backed away from Cameron and sat down in the chair across from her. You don't know me, and you have no right to accuse me of any such things. Cameron breathed hard. Lucy could see the anger taking over her usually charming, cold self. I bet my mother is paying you an astronomical salary for living here free of charge. You're just riding this one out right until the very end, aren't you? That was a rhetorical question. Cameron had no need to respond, yet she tried. What? I can see right through people like you, Lucy interjected. Taking advantage of the terminally ill like a hyena pouncing for the money hill. Oh, and don't worry, your secret is safe with me. I don't want anything from her. You can have it all. Lucy inspected her face as she spoke. On one condition. Her blue eyes were blazing hot, and she was breathing very hard, but she didn't say a word. So Lucy placed her condition on the table for her to ogle over. She loved the power she had over women, and this one was no different. Sleep with me. Fuck you.
See, Heidi, you could have actually, that was great. You could have actually picked a clip with some colorful
Multi-language.
shall we say. Yeah, I don't think there's anything I don't think we've ever said that we aren't going to swear on our podcast. So there you go. Anything else you want to add to that, Clark?
I don't think so. I thought the book was great. I had listened to your podcast with the author, and I noticed that you also kind of stayed up past your bedtime trying to get to the end of the story. I thought it was a great story.
It was a good story.
Yeah, she is very excited to hear you and see you and put a face to the name. So
Right.
I'm sure she's going to be harassing Annette to get that edit done quickly so she can hear and see.
Yeah, Allie and I talked about, should we have the authors and the narrators together? And we said, no, we just really wanted to chat with the narrators. So we didn't invite them, and I'm sure they're like, dang it.
Yeah. Maybe in the future we'll pair you guys up as we do.
Maybe in the future we'll do another one and pair the authors and the narrators together, but for right now. So now we get to the good part. Get to ask y'all some questions here. And the first question we'd love to hear is how you got into narrating books for our small publishing house, Affinity. Heidi, you want to start off?
Sure. I started with Affinity pretty early in my career as well. I had I don't know if you know McGee Matthews, but I did I think that's how I came to Affinity was because of her, because I'd done a series of hers. And you know, before the pandemic, I was reading books for Learning Ally. And that's where I learned the production side of things. And it was really fun. I love doing it. Of course, you don't get paid for that, but you know, textbooks, hey man, it's really fun. And so I learned conventions and everything else. And then when the pandemic hit, I didn't have any excuse not to put some auditions out there. And so she was one of the first books I did. And honestly, I have hardly had to do any auditions since then. You know, sometimes I'll do an audition just to get something slightly different. Um, you know, something, you know, like horror or something like that, because I like to do a whole bunch of stuff. But through Facebook, I have met so many authors, and I just, you know, I can kind of pick and choose what I want to do, which I really love, you know. And I think it's a great way to scratch that itch of acting when, you know, I can't do that, you know, and especially during the lockdown, it focused me during some really hard times in my life. So it was very a healthy outlet for me.
Yeah. Well, we're real happy that you joined us. Yeah, I went after Heidi actually, because I know McGee pretty well. And so she suggested Heidi. I said, well, I'm just going to go contact her then. See if she'll.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, we enjoy working with you a lot.
Oh, thank you. I love working with you guys.
Heidi, I'm kind of like sort of where you were, I guess. I'm pretty brand new and I auditioned, gosh, for a bunch of stuff on Amazon. And Allie reached out to me when I did a couple of auditions and just kept sending me things. She's like, you should try this one and you should try this one. And so I've got like things that are, you know, sitting there, and the more I did research on Affinity, the more I was interested. And I hope I get to work with you guys forever, because everything you guys write is just, it's all kind of delicious and interesting. And like the 23 Miles book that I'm working on, the more I learn about the story behind it, the more I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this. This is such a big deal.
It's a great book. It's one of my favorites. Renee is actually a really, really talented author.
She is. She's very talented. The more I read about her, and the more that I get into the book, I'm just like, I really am freaking honored that she's letting me do this. I mean, I you know, it's, I don't know, it's just, and I hope, like I said, I hope I get to work with you guys forever on every book, because it's great.
Well, we're happy you're with us.
Before we go on, just to give you my role a little bit, I'm not only an author, but Lisa and I are kind of the enablers. Oh, sorry, Annette. And we have been requesting a little overwhelming, I think, that we do more in audio books and in narration. And, you know, so Julie, our boss and the owner of the company, just kind of threw it back in our laps. So you will get emails from me saying, hey, this will be perfect for you. Will you please? So, you know, you're going to hear a lot from Allie and Annette, you know, because we're the ones that are really pushing it. We think it's the wave of the future for us. And, you know, we're going to continue to hound you. And we hope that we can match you up with the authors that you enjoy, the types of stories that you enjoy. So it's a win-win situation for both.
Yeah, and if there's any, honestly, if there's any books that are in the Affinity catalog that you're like, hey, I'd really love to do this one, let us know.
Yeah. I think we're sitting at 32 right now.
Yeah, something like that.
And we've got, I think, 17 more in various stages of production, but we've got over 200 in the catalog. We're not going to do all of them, but, you know, we're trying to really push that as we have new releases, which we have at least one every month, that we do the Audible at the same time. So all three different formats come out at once. So we're going to keep you guys busy.
Yeah, we will. We definitely will. All right.
All right. Sorry, back to the question.
Clark?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if there was an order of people
Yeah.
responding.
We're just
Um,
chatting.
I auditioned on ACX for Mom's Last Wish, and I got it, and kind of had the same experience where Ali had got in contact with me and um, suggested another book too. So I'm excited to do that one as well, and hoping that there's a sibling novel, it seems like, kind of in the works from Mom's Last Wish that Charlene's doing. I'd love to do that too, just to kind of keep it together. But yeah, that's how I found you folks, and I do appreciate having suggestions for books that would be a good match for me
Yeah.
because I'm
Okay.
also very new.
So Clark,
What
what's the other book that you're in the works with? Just curious.
Oh, Taming the Wolf.
she's got
Dell's
Dell's.
book. You're gonna,
Yeah.
if you haven't read it yet, you're gonna love
Oh,
it.
I read it.
It's a very fun. She's a very fun author. She's great, and I did get a chance to read the sibling book, and it's really good. It's more of a mystery. So there's yeah, it's good. It's really good.
I'm
Yeah.
excited.
One of the things that we've just started doing, because we have really branched out in the number of narrators that we're using, is we've come up with a book fact sheet that the author will fill out to give to the narrators, that hopefully has information that will help you understand what accents, where's the setting of the book, what era is it in. So, Dell is working on one for you right now, Clark, that you should have in the next day or so to give you a little bit more background on taming. Heidi's gotten a couple. Susan, have I got a doozy for you coming up?
It makes such a difference when we get those fact sheets and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh.
But if you ever see any stuff like that you think from an author's perspective we can provide you that will help you with narration, please let us know, because we're open. We're new to this too. I mean, we're rookies.
Yeah, I didn't do that for Heidi for the first several books, and so she would send me emails like, "Can you tell me a little bit more about XYZ?" And I'm famous for having accents in my books, Russian accents, Mexican accents, so and names of cities that I can't pronounce, but somehow the narrators do a great job with, so it's pretty good. So how about you, Danielle?
I also found Affinity on ACX. I auditioned for, sorry, my just head fog. I can't remember the name right. Strength Within. There we go. There it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and really enjoyed that book. And then I got an email a couple of days after getting that one that was like, hey, we're going to be putting 2 more books up on. So I'll also be doing If I Were a Boy coming up.
Yeah, that's it's a great book. It was the other founding person at Affinity was Erin O'Reilly. She has passed away, but she was my personal mentor. So yeah, so that's going to be a sweet tribute to Erin.
Yeah.
Bittersweet, but honored. Thank you.
Last but not least, Susan.
It's kind of short answer is I was reached out to based on some other work I had done, and was asked if I was interested in doing a book. The first one was Rising from Ash, which I still have to work on with Jax. Had a great conversation with Jax, which was fantastic. But anywho, and then I'm also doing South of Heaven, obviously. So that's the short answer. Someone reached out to me and said, hey, are you interested? And I said, well, yeah, sure. Let's take a look. I kind of divide up my long form narration work into the things that I do that are per finished hour paid and things that I do that are royalty share. And I try to keep a balance just because of finances, right?
Sure,
so you got to kind of find your way through that. And then what's funny is about 2 weeks before someone reached out to me, I had sat down and had done this like high level view of the work I was doing and trying to figure out where the interest was coming from. Like, where do my strengths lie? Who actually always reaches out to me? That kind of thing. And it was very businesslike. I was being a grown up and looking at my business as a whole. I'm like, hey, how will we move forward? Anyhow, so I did that. And I thought to myself, what genres do I want to work in? And where is the work coming from? And it was really funny, the two different communities that strongly enjoyed my narration work. And I thought, that's fascinating. Out of those two communities, which one do I want to work in? And then I made that decision in my head. And then I said, if I'm doing royalty share, this is what I'm focused on. And then I got an email. And then I was like, and there it is. Okay. Here we go. So yeah, I can't wait. It is all lined up in such a beautiful little way. And I'm like, let's have some fun. And there's so many different genres within the family at Affinity. It's like you can stretch your muscles in so many different ways. You will never want me to do a Russian accent. Ever. It is so.
Well, fortunately, Heidi does a really good Russian accent. She's been
Yeah.
quite good at it.
And I will always be incredibly upfront about, you know what, this story is fantastic, but you want somebody that'll do a better job than me. So do the best I can. But anyway, that's how I landed, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, it's interesting that you talked about the Sapphic world and Affinity, because that's our next question is because it is a smaller subgenre of romance, which most of the Sapphic books out there have some kind of romance element to it. Let's be clear about that. There are very few that don't have some kind of romance. So are Sapphic books or working with Sapphic authors different than the more mainstream books that you've worked with? And if so, in what ways are they different?
Just because I was just talking on this, I'll dive in here. Short answer, no. But there is more of a sense of community amongst authors and readers.
Oh, yes.
I find. But outside of that, as a hopeless romantic, as long as somebody is tingling and happy about it, I'm pretty much in. So like, woohoo! So from the narration angle of it, for me, there's not a huge difference. From the promotion and community sense, there is more of a difference. I find it's a much more supportive place to land, and a smidge more forgiving about a bad Russian accent. Because it's often more about, how do I explain this? It's more about the feeling and the emotiveness of the book versus the particulars all the time. So as long as people are getting the right feeling that are enjoying the book, at least that's a bit of a difference. Does that make any sense? Or is that just really...
No, impressions are more important than the fine details when it comes to telling a story.
Yes.
Yeah. And I found that's reinforced more in the Sapphic work and community versus the more mainstream stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I definitely think reading Sapphic books has really ignited my feminism because, I know, right? I actually sing with the feminist choir now too. And it's amazing because it's very, it's not like militant or anything, when people say it's like feminism is a bad word, but reading books where all of the characters are doing everything. They're not relying on anybody else. And they're also not, there's still that push and pull of the misogynistic culture that we live in, of course, but unfortunately, but it really has helped kind of change my thinking. And it's very empowering, I feel. And I love learning the different characters and seeing people just do absolutely anything,
Cool.
Anybody else? Danielle?
Danielle, Clark?
Clark?
Yeah,
Kelly?
it doesn't feel much different to me. I feel like the emotion is really what you want to go for, and human emotion is kind of across the board. Um, but I think it's always good to have stories like this that represent people who haven't been represented in stories before, and for people to have people that they can relate to and be normalized. I think it's really important that we normalize all the different kinds of humans. And that makes me excited to be a part of the sapphic literature world more.
Wonderful.
I actually just had this conversation. My husband said, because I was saying the LBTGQIA plus, and he was like, there's more to add to it. And I was like, yeah. I was like, do you know how important it is to feel recognized and seen? You know, it's easy for a white guy. You know, they're
Yep.
overrepresented in every freaking possible place, you know, and I, you know, as you know, I think we all want to be seen. And there's a lot of people that are afraid to be seen. And I think that this, also reading this genre is helps me to expand my knowledge of the world since I live in my own silo.
Yeah.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
I just learned why the L comes first.
Isn't that a great story? It's a wonderful story.
It is, yes, and like, I mean, yes.
Yes, but also, yeah, no, it's
like, so powerful, like horrific that happened in order for that to happen, but like,
right.
Still such a powerful story when I learned it, and it was brand new to me.
Oh, well, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
I also don't know.
Well, Susan, now you get to tell the story.
Would you tell the story?
Big L here, and I don't know.
Okay, so I might
None
get
of the
I might get
lesbians know.
I might get a few of the facts wrong, and this is a podcast, so please forgive me, anyone that's listening that's like, that's not entirely correct. But during the AIDS situation and HIV AIDS, when all that was happening, that would have been the 80s, right? So in that time, the lesbian community stepped up on such a level to take care of people who were not being appropriately taken care of. And I'm not saying that lesbians also didn't get HIV and AIDS, but primarily in that time, it was the gay community and the men that were dealing with it. And the lesbian community stepped up and took care of people, took care when their families weren't there, when the health care wasn't there, when they needed people to bring them food and hold their hand in their last moments, and like all of it. Oh, dear me. It was like so incredibly powerful what the community did, and did it so like from the heart, like full chest, like we are here and this needs to be done and we are going to step up and take care of you, and did it. And what happened was that basically the L was moved to the front because the lesbian community should never be looked at as second. They should always be looked at as equals or as first because of what they did for the greater community during one of the most horrific times. And
wow, interesting. I did not know that, and I'm older than dirt, so I was, you know, I mean, I was in my 20s in the 80s. So yeah, so I mean, I remember that time, obviously, but I didn't know that was the reason. Very interesting.
It was huge. And I think it was in some of the bigger cities that was really, really coming to play. I want to say New York, but that's only because I'm an Ontario girl to start, even though I live out west now. Like, so that was my experience because I would have been in Ontario at that time, in Toronto, while all that was going on and in high school. But yeah, Kelly, does that more or less sound like the same story that you're?
Yeah, it was the nurses, the lesbian nurses, because no one was coming to take care of, you know, the gay patients, and they were dying and no one was taking care of them. And so the lesbian nurses were the ones that were stepping up more often than not. And it was such a profound thing that, like you said, they moved the L to the front.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think they also, there's a good percentage of blood donors for HIV patients that were lesbians as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I think that charge was led from, like, the lesbian nurses started it, and then the rest of the community fell in behind and basically said, what do we do? We're not nurses, but like, how?
Yeah.
Right? It's such a powerful and great story
That
or
is powerful, great
mystery.
story. Somebody
right?
ought to write us. Yeah, write a book about that.
Someone had to write a book
So,
about it, huh?
You know, our
Yeah.
podcast, we go down rabbit holes, obviously because I lead people down those paths. So I'm gonna crawl us out of that rabbit hole and just remind us of the previous question of our sapphic books or working with sapphic authors different than mainstream books. And for those of you who haven't shared and would like to share, I think Clark, I'm not sure if we.
Yeah, I don't have so much to offer here as because I am so new. I'm working with one other author at this time who's not a sapphic author, but it's kind of a YA sci-fi, so it's kind of still open-minded and stuff.
Yeah.
So I just don't really have much to compare to yet. And sorry.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't have a lot to compare it to, but like I have read a lot of sapphic stories and have, written some short stuff for my friends and things like that when it comes to sapphic literature. And I think like the big one is the emotional connection between the characters and also, women being people and doing all the things and having that underrepresented in a lot of other stories and novels. And it's just very, and we know that as, women and people that women are people and they do anything that they need to. It doesn't really matter. But having it represented in a book, in a novel that's published, that I get to read, that's pretty damn cool.
I'm going to throw this out there real quick too, because in South of Heaven, it wasn't until I was about 3/4 of the way through that I realized, like when I did my first read through, that there was something in the book I was responding to that I didn't understand. And then I realized it was that all the women were just women being respected and trusted to do the appropriate jobs that they were doing, even working with men who were also treating them with the same level of respect and trust that they would do the job that needed to be done in an industry that is like super male driven. And not a big deal was made out of it. It just was. And that is glorious.
Yes.
Oh,
Allie's really great at that.
yeah.
I like to pick characters that aren't your typical lawyer, doctor, movie star, those kind of things, and talk about everyday people because that's who we are.
Yep, everyday people.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Are we ready to move to the next question?
I think so. What does your process look like? Do you have any special rituals when you're producing?
I have to sing to warm up my voice. I'm terrible at it. I have a friend of mine that introduced me to like karaoke as just for a microphone in my recording room. It's a great way to test the sound and test the soundproofing. So that's one of the things that I do. Like when I read that question, I was like, I don't think I have any other rituals other than getting my water and making sure my phone is on silent and putting the dogs out so that they don't bother me and scratch at the door. And the other thing is just, I make sure I have a playlist of songs that I love to sing, and I sing 2 or 3 of them, warm up with vocal cords, and start to speak.
Okay.
My sister got me this Rocketbook thing where you can erase the pages, you can take a picture of it and everything. So I've been able to stop killing trees. And so I have all my characters listed. I've got all the chapters and page numbers. And then I have a system where, if I've rendered it, and then if I've edited, and then if I've uploaded it, and then if there's more edits, I add it on there. And then check this out. This was from the next generation. This is a flow chart of the characters because I have to keep all those notes because they come back. And I want some continuity with the characters from past books. And I'm glad I kept my notes because all those characters came back, and then you get to age them on top of it. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really fun. And then a lot of times I'll take my characters, I'll see someone on TV, or I'll be like, ooh, that would be perfect. So I use that as a touchstone for that voice, every time they come back up. So I kind of have a firm idea of who that person is because I think I'll remember. Don't.
I think I'll remember many things.
I'm like, yeah, I'll remember. And I'm like, no. So I keep my notes and I got my little tabs and everything else. And so I can work on multiple projects at the same time. The first thing I do is map my book. And usually I know where to look up words. If there's weird town names, Allie. God, what's the last one is New Orleans. I had to look up. I'm like, how do they say it in New Orleans? Because it might not be the French pronunciation,
Yeah, Nolans. Yeah.
Nolans.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was working with sorry. I was working with Penguin Random House, and my director, when we weren't sure on a name, just called the local library down there and was like, "Oh, great. This is how you pronounce it. Thank you. We just were working on an audiobook." And
well, I had
librarians know the things, so call the local library.
Brilliant.
I had to tease Susan. I told her, I said, if my book gets narrated with pecans instead of pecans, they're going to run me out of the South.
Oh, they will. They will.
They will.
And I have no problem going back and correcting things because it happens again as a Canadian in particular.
Yeah.
Usually I catch them because part of my process too is when I'm going through the book the first time, I make notes of all the little words, the roots and the routes and the shawns and the shown and that stuff, and make sure that I've through. So I correct. Sorry about the mobile. That one I knew. So I must have been very in character and just went straight through it. But you read the book and you make the notes, right? And then I have a 4-stage editing process of recording and then different files and blah, 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 that you go through it. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that it can take 6 hours to do 1 hour.
Yeah.
It is.
Let me ask a question. When I have a silly word like pecans, how difficult is it to go back and correct that one word?
It depends on your setup. I've learned, because I remember being in Clark's shoes and being 2 books in and then suddenly having to go back and do all these pickups, and I hadn't saved the raw audio. I had only saved the processed audio.
Yeah.
And that I did find a way, but matching in that scenario can be really, really hard. If you can go back into your raw audio and you haven't changed your mic, I've got a new mic coming and it's here now, but I'm ignoring it because I can't change mics in the middle of your book.
No. Right.
Because the sound changes, right? So there's those little things that you got to be really aware of. And different books are harder depending on character voices, depending where you are in the allergy season.
Yes. Even what time of day it is.
I was just saying, exactly.
Yeah, it can those little things can make pickups hard. I use Youglish.com. I don't know if everybody, Youglish is this amazing site where you can put in a word and then it basically does a Google search, not a Google search. It does it trolls through the internet and it gets all these little clips of real people saying the word.
Ooh, that's cool.
It's fantastic.
I think that Positron might also have a setting that's like that.
I find it's not quite as free and
it's not free.
It's not free. Youglish is free and it's used really, really extensively, which is nice. So if anyone, that's a good little tip. They want to find how to say, or just send a note to the author. And for the authors, if you can send back a sound memo, send you back actually saying the word, because that's fantastic. Because spelling things phonetically or using anyway, everybody does it slightly differently. So if you just say it, that would be great. And there's different areas within different areas that just dang. like East Coast versus West Coast versus middle, like
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
For
it can be
place,
hard.
for place names, I go to local newscasts.
Yeah.
So sometimes those help. But yeah, I had this, oh my goodness, the most difficult book I had was the Holocaust Memorial, and the survivor is still alive. She's 94, and they live in California. And the daughter was writing the book, and she was speaking. Now, I've studied German, French, and Italian because as a classical singer, you do. And so I had so my Yiddish was pretty good, everything except for I had to read the whole Kaddish. So I listened to it and recorded it in bites. And my husband said it sounded like an old rabbi. And I was like, well, that's who I listened to, apparently. But I spoke directly with her mother, the 94-year-old, because her German or her Polish Yiddish was not any other Yiddish that I'd ever heard. And it was very, very tricky and difficult. And so with her, it was like every file I'd send and she'd, go through it. And so I wouldn't get a lot of distance between the file, the initial recording, and then the producing. Because I do have another book where it was taken off, it's come back, but now he'd written a sequel in the interim, and now he changed one of the character names. Yes. I have a new mic, a new computer, going through and trying to match. Like, you can't just pull, it's not like, find and replace. You have to excise an entire sentence to do it and to smooth it out. And it's not for the faint of heart, and it's very time consuming. And I mean, the notes that I'm writing about it, I don't even know. I don't know if I can do it. I'm going to try my best.
It's super interesting though, right? Like when you're talking about accents and stuff too, like depending on the time it's set in, New York is a wonderful example, because if people talk about a New York accent, if you're talking about one from the 80s, it's more Jewish influenced, really. Like it's that side of things. Now it's way more Spanish.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when people talk about a traditional New York accent, you don't want to say, what generation are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because it's evolved and changed. So stereotypes can influence things, but then it's actually wrong. So what do you really want? Like,
also, what neighborhood in New York?
Yeah,
because
Well,
that
I was
makes
gonna
a
say,
huge
there's
difference.
all the different boroughs it's
Yeah.
different, right? Yeah.
I had a great narrator once tell me, who does a lot of, she's a coach and she's amazing. And she said, sometimes what you have to do is don't worry about doing the accent for the entire thing. All you do is choose a couple of words that have the slight accent to it, because as a narrator, that then implies it, but the listener can fill it in, much like when you're reading the book. And
makes sense.
Yeah,
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It also makes it easier for the listener to understand, because some accents are really hard to hear and pick up and know what people are saying unless you're from there.
Yeah.
And then you also wander into a world of just being rude, right? Like, I mean, we have to be really careful to be respectful and everything else when you're doing accents in books, because that can get really dicey and inappropriate.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm turning to my mother. Young lady, what do you think you're doing? Sorry.
Other folks have interesting things to share about processes that you go through.
I don't know if it's interesting. Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
Go ahead. You go for it, Clark.
Well, it's not very interesting. It's just read through the book, obviously, and I find it helps me to highlight the dialogue between different characters. It's like, so when I'm narrating, when I come across it, my brain immediately associates, oh, that color is so and so, and if there's an accent or different
good idea
gender, that was a really helpful thing for me.
Such a good idea. Yeah.
And it helps
people
if you
don't
like missed something or messed something up. You don't have to be like searching through, oh, where's that page? Where's that dialogue? Be like, oh, it's it's kind of highlighted.
Yeah.
I am one of those people who cannot read without an audiobook. So when I'm getting ready, I have to read the book out loud to myself in order to be able to retain the information, because I've had multiple brain injuries and neurological surgeries. And so that's something that's unique about me. And I think it helps me in a lot of ways because I can retain that information so much easier. And I haven't had to do like a ton of work with taking notes. And I've done a lot of books so far that have had lots of characters and different places and different accents. So I feel like that's one thing that's been an advantage to me a little bit. That's a little bit funky.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like that's left over from being a teen in theater. Like I remember as a high school student, I had the title role and read through my script one time, and just remembered it, but I can't take it in unless I'm saying it out loud.
Now you're just showing off.
That's cool.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I am learning
But-
so much from you guys. This is
Yeah.
interesting. Anybody else want to share anything? I think we sort of heard from you, but not completely. Kelly, maybe on your rituals.
Oh no, like I think I said it all, but I was gonna say about like one of the rituals that I'm trying to work on is to look up all the damn names before I go through the book completely. Because I did this one, the first few books I did, English was not the first language for both authors. One of them was Kenyan, and the other one I think she is from Iran. And both lovely people. I struggled with his name, and he was so kind about letting me, work through his name. And then the woman wrote a book about World War II Polish Jewish refugees. And I could not say most of those Polish cities for the life of me. I had to go look them up, and I had to look them up on YouTube. And that is one of the coolest things that I learned, is that YouTube has most major cities listed somewhere, and you're able, and like they lay out the pronunciation. So I really, really appreciated that. And I wrote that down somewhere. Look up all the weird cities and names before you go through the whole book completely, because I was doing a lot of cold reading in the beginning, and that didn't work for me. So I need to try to work that into my process.
And that's when people have to realize, when we say it takes 6 hours to do 1 hour of finished audio, when you start getting into those scenarios, you're looking at 10 to 12 hours of work to do 1 hour. So when we're looking at like how we get paid to do our work and that sort of stuff, I mean, that's sometimes one of the little pushbacks, right? We're like, do recognize, like, to everybody, like, it's a lot of work. Some people, I think we just sit down and like read it and then hit send,
Yeah.
which is fascinating. I don't mean like Affinity, like that's not what I mean, but like,
Yeah, no, authors probably understand that, that there's a lot more that goes into writing books. There's a lot more that goes into narrating books. And yeah.
mouth noise sucks.
Yeah.
Mouth noise is the bane of my existence. Anyway, sorry.
Lawnmowers are the bane of my existence.
Oh,
I live on a street with a bunch of retired men who are home all day and they have nothing better to do than take care of their lawn. It's very, very hard to record. And they don't synchronize. One of them stops and another one starts.
Yeah, leaf blowers.
So
Leaf blowers the worst.
So that leads us to our next question, which is near and dear to my heart, is describe the perfect author to work with on narration, because, I always want to make it as easy as possible for the narrators. So it's helpful to know what that looks like for y'all.
Information. And then trust.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Popular. Give us all the information you possibly can, and then trust us to run with it.
Mm-hmm. I find that all of the Affinity authors are very trusting, because it's an honor to read what someone else has written, because you're just giving us the reins, and we can interpret things in 1,000 different ways. And so I feel very, very honored that I'm trusted to do that, and you give us a lot of creative license.
That was something that surprised that was something that surprised me about working with Renee and Allie from like the get-go, was that they were very generous with information about the characters and helping me figure out the voice for the characters. Because often, I don't know if you guys have this experience, but with ACX, to do an audition, they just turn you down. They don't say, hey, can
Yep.
you, come back with this or try
Yeah.
this or adjust this? But Renee and Allie, they both did that. And it was really cool to know that I nailed at least the main character's voice. But then, if I adjusted just a couple of different things, I could tell the story better. And I think that would be forever my preferred narrator author experience is, like you said, somebody that trusts and gives information. That was that was a pretty cool experience.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
My dog's okay and ready to get picked up.
Yay!
Danielle, what kind of author is your perfect author to work with?
I have not worked with an author who I've had a hard time with yet. And so I feel like maybe I'm lucky in that. But I don't really know what makes an author easy to work with and not easy to work with then, because most of my authors have been super trusting and have, just given kind of free rein. And it's just fun I think it's fun for a lot of authors to hear a different interpretation of their books sometimes too.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's good to have as much information as possible, but then also to let the narrator do their job and be a performer, because I think, or at least I know that there are stories of authors who micromanage and try to like, can you do this line differently and this line differently and this line differently? But our job is to kind of get into the emotion and get into that person's head and bring forth like a different experience. And so I think just having people trust you with that is an important thing for an author to do.
One of the things that I like about working with Heidi is I get into a lot of feels sometimes. And when she can make me cry reading my book, it's just like, you can't ask for better validation.
Yeah.
It's true. That's true.
Also, if your writing is good enough to make the narrator cry too. Yeah, like I've had a number of books where I'm just like, and you have to pull it together so you can get it out and not change your voice because of the mucus. And like it's hard.
Yeah, Allie's good at that. She makes people cry at her books.
It's
I'm
an
not
interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure too many of my books make people cry.
No, these fits you.
We need happy moments too, right?
Yeah.
I just like the badass women in Annette's books too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make their villains cry.
They do.
It also depends.
Somebody's crying. That's what's important.
Yeah. It's interesting if you're working with the author or if you're working with the publisher, right? Or because sometimes in this line of work, the rights holder isn't necessarily the author, and so you're not communicating with the author. You're communicating with, I guess, the publisher. And it's a completely different experience. And in some ways it's easier.
It's a lot easier, I think.
It's not, you're not dealing with somebody's baby, right?
Yeah.
That they have given a certain name and a certain, like, all that sort of stuff. So the emotional attachment is different, which then
interesting.
Yeah, it's a really different, it can be a very, very different experience.
I find publishers to be a lot more hands-off.
Yeah. They see it as two very different things. Like, or some do. They see it as two very different things versus the author writes the book, but the narrator is narrating the book, which comes with a different skill set.
Very much so.
To give the characters different colors. I'm reaching here. My metaphors are bad. But like to fill out different gaps that don't happen necessarily in the writing.
Yeah, I had that experience with another publisher and a difficult author who it was her only book. She was in her 80s. It was her baby. And she wanted to change all these pronunciations of everything that I had so carefully researched. Yeah. And I did not have to confront the author at all, that the publisher actually went through and very, very tactfully, found some compromise that worked really well, which was very much appreciated because, I had just finished the book and I was like, you're freaking kidding me. I mean, you could have told me that in chapter 1, but she was a Luddite too. And she didn't, I didn't fault her for that being her baby.
Right.
and I understood that. So
Yeah, it's interesting that you say trust and let you interpret the book, because that makes sense. Otherwise it would be really hard. There was this Facebook post that I saw just the other day about do you, as an author, do you have a particular vision of what the characters look like? And I would guess that the same is true for the question would be, do you have a specific vision about what the characters sound like? And it's interesting. I don't even have a very good picture of what they look like, other than, basic dark hair, blue eyes, whatever, I make up, but I don't really get locked into what they look like or what they sound like. So hopefully that makes it easier for the narrator to interpret things as they see fit, or the reader to, you get some description, but not so descriptive that it's prescriptive to the way a reader would read how that person looks and sounds. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, when Heidi, when you did the twins and Fire, you did those kids so perfectly. It's like, yes, I couldn't have thought of anything any better to do for those two.
it's fun doing little kids' voices.
Yeah.
Okay, funny stories. Any funny stories that you want to share?
Most of my funny stories are around saying things wrong. We were talking, those funny story question, that was more about the little spicier scenes, right?
That was my story.
Well, and I giggled when I read one of them, because I do realize that, like, sometimes if I'm doing something that's really hot, like over the top hot, like, oh, that's how that works. Okay. Hot.
It's educational.
I'm like,
It's very educational.
okay.
So much.
How many times am I going to say that word? If I find myself pausing for a giggle, which does happen on occasion, where I find myself stopping and I'm like, 13-year-old Susan would be like, what is happening right now? and you're doing what for a living? But it also tells me that I've lost track of my character. So it means that the other part of my active brain, which is often driven by societal crap, has entered the chat, and I need to kick it out of the chat to get back into my mode, right? So it's kind of a fun experiment. I'm a little petri dish. I look at myself and I'm like, that's really interesting that's now creeped into my brain. I got to kick it back out and get back into my character, who is right now sweating and having a very good time. So
Wow.
you got to kind of, it's neat. It's kind of fun.
I feel like narrating romance has been really good for my marriage.
That's awesome.
Do you know, like, one of the things that they prescribe women who are going through a low libido phase of their life, whether it's perimenopause or premenopause or menopause or some other reason, doctors will suggest erotic stories, and sapphic ones are very popular.
Yes. I get that.
I could see that.
I get that. Yeah.
It's good for other mental health too. Like if you're a person who has really bad anxiety, there have been studies done that show that if you are listening to or reading spicy or smutty books, it changes that anxious energy into a more like enjoyable energy. And helps your mind to like reframe these bad feelings and get you into a better mental state.
So
really cool.
Allie, do you know who's gonna narrate the one book that I'm like, oh my gosh, whoever gets to narrate your polyamory book, who is?
Susan.
Susan. Susan, you are in for a treat.
Yeah.
Let's crank her up, baby. As long as it's not like a Russian accent in there, I'm good.
No Russian.
You are in for a treat.
The hot ones are fun, man. Like,
They are.
That's exactly what I needed to hear because it's
it's
coming.
based in so much joy, right? Like when push comes to shove, I did not mean that the way that sounded, but like,
Sure.
like
That's
when you
what she said.
when you get into those moments, it's based in such a primal joy and satisfaction and like all the good things in life just sort of put into one little hot package. It's entertaining.
I don't want
Anybody
to
else?
get you a giggling during mine, okay?
No, I
Yeah.
promise. If there's giggling, I stop and I start again. Usually a couple paragraphs ahead.
Anybody else have any funny stories they want to share?
None that are suitable for the Bible. So
I do have to be careful though, because this is really funny. So in my studio, I have a Studio Brooks studio, but this is a glass door.
so you get to make funny faces.
So if I'm making like if my husband happens to wander upstairs, while I'm like recording stuff, and he like wanders up the stairs, sometimes he's like, "Oh my, okay." Oh, we have a very good time around here. Yeah, because it's got a big glass door, and I get very red in the face when I'm reading some of the stuff. I'm sorry, I talk too much.
No worries. All right, we better move on, or we'll never end this podcast, which is kind of okay for me, but probably not for the rest of y'all.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna skip the question of if it's easy or hard to narrate graphic sex scenes, because I think we've been chatting about that quite a bit. So we probably don't need to chat about that more.
I was going to say something about that. I had some
please
stuff
do
to
that,
say.
Kelly.
Well, because like Danielle, she started by reading her poetry. I started out by reading my erotica. So that was where a lot of my like encouragement came from, because I had all these stories and I was complaining that, I didn't know what to do with them. And a friend of mine was like, why don't you read them out loud and see what happens? And a lot of great things happened when I started to share my little audio things of my short stories that were, very spicy. And I really liked, some of the things that I could do with like character voices and things like that. And it just, I don't know, I actually don't find them difficult at all to do. And I'm really looking forward to doing more of them, because I don't want to say like I have a good voice for it, but I kind of do. So I'm sort of like, it's never been a problem. And I always sort of look forward to those bits of the stories and the books, because it's just interesting to see how it's going to play out and how it's going to sound.
Interesting. Okay. What kind of advice would any of you give to someone wanting to break into narration?
Man, I get people probably at least once a month, if not more. Oh, you do audiobooks? That sounds really fun. I'd love to do that. And I'm like, okay.
Well,
Be prepared for some work, my friend.
Yeah.
I tell them to do the test that Sean Pratt advises. Sean Pratt is a really big narrator. He's primarily known for nonfiction, and he's a coach also. And I found when I was first looking into it, a video of him on YouTube that was like, if you think this is something you want to do, what you should do is for like 4 to 6 hours every day, lock yourself in your closet and read out loud to yourself. And every time you make a mistake, go back to the start of that sentence and go back through it. And if at the end of 2 weeks, you have spent those 4 to 6 hours a day in your closet and you don't hate your life, then maybe this is something that would be good for you to continue looking into. But there are so many people who will spend so much money pouring so much effort and resources into the equipment that you need, and then they find out, this sucks. I hate this. I can't do it. I'm alone all day. I'm stuck in this dark little tiny room. It's hot. There's no airflow. And that's what it is. Like, you're literally reading to yourself in a padded room all day. And that doesn't work for a lot of people. So try it before you spend the money to buy the things that you might need. And then if you do like it, don't skimp on it, because you'll end up paying more money later if you get the cheap stuff up front. And your sound quality is not going to be good. You're not going to get jobs. So you want to get professional grade equipment right from the get-go if it's at all possible after the testing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Good
I
advice.
was lucky. I had, because I'm a musician, I had already had a condenser mic and a preamp and stuff. So that was a leap I thankfully didn't have to take. And this isn't my closet, but my closet is of a similar size. So I was able to kind of do that first before building this thing. But yeah, no, I think Sean Pratt's test is a great thing to do, because you might really hate being in a room by yourself reading out loud for hours.
Yeah. Wow.
And don't let too many people influence you not to do it. Like, if it's something you really want to do, the Sean Pratt test is perfect. And then once you get into it, don't let, like, people really love to preach about the right ways and the wrong ways and what you should do and what you shouldn't do and how much you should charge and never do royalty share. Don't like it's like there's all sorts of different philosophies on it. So, I mean, to a certain degree, you should always listen to pros and seek them out and find what's working. But also follow your heart. And if it works for what you want to do, and it brings you satisfaction as well as helps pay the rent, then, follow your path. Like, follow your path. Great coaching from professionals, and finding those great coaches. There's a lot of people that love to slam coach on their door that have no business being a coach. But there's some really wonderful groups out there that can help if somebody's just getting into it to find their way, and also help you be able to do it faster off the top, because the amount of time can be a real killer.
Yeah.
It truly can. Yeah. And not just for the editing and stuff. If you struggle with certain characters or words or things like that, there are shortcuts, and people that are experts can really help you a lot find your way through it.
I would guess it's a little bit like writing, is that, you have to sort of love it, because there are going to be, especially if you're doing royalty share, there's going to be some books that you make your money on and others that you don't. I always kind of worry about that with narrators. And, I want to go, gosh, I know Affinity does royalty share because we're really a small publisher, and that's really all they can do. And I always want to, like, maybe I should, like, shoot my narrator some extra money here and there, because I always worry about, whether it's worth it.
Most of us go into it with our eyes open, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting into. My only thing ever is, like, if I'm super busy and have too many projects going at the same time, I'll spend the money and hire a professional proofer to go through stuff. Working with you guys is great because you do that. So you're catching any mistakes I make. Sometimes I'll hire a professional, someone to master it for me, because I could do it. I'm good at it, whatever. I'm not fast. And if I have too many things going at the same time, I don't get it done in a timely fashion, and that frustrates the crap out of me. I hate missing deadlines, and I do sometimes. If I can find a professional to help me with that, I'll spend the money on that. Royalty Share Plus sometimes is great, but I mean, as long as people are clear about it is a royalty share project, then you go in with your eyes open. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes that's a numbers game, which is so wonderful working with a group like this, where we have a community and people get to know you. And we do more than one books, and some books will sell a lot and some won't. That's okay.
Right.
That's cool. That's life. Right?
The one quote I remember reading whenever I think about audiobooks is, you don't get into it necessarily for the money. You're doing it because you love it.
Yeah.
And it's like every single thing I do.
Yeah.
When is someone going to give me some money? Just joking. But yeah, it's there's so much work that goes into every single book, and you think about how many times, like if you're like I'm reading a really gory one right now, and I have to kind of temper that with something else because it just seeps into your psyche because you have to read it so many times, and you don't have the luxury of skipping ahead to a non-gory spot. You gotta commit to that, and you do have to care for your mental health, and that's why I like to do a huge variety.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of a segue into my next request, not a question. Would y'all take a few minutes and send me an email? Let me know what you prefer. What genres do you like doing? The horror, the gory, the erotic, whatever. And then that way we can help match you up with authors, because we want to stick with a core group. We want to. I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you today, and I think you're a great bunch. And certainly folks that we will reach out to in the future, and you're going to hear a lot from Allie and Annette, without doubts. But if you have things that you just don't like to narrate, let us know, so we won't pair you up with somebody that's not going to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I can speak, I'm sure I can speak for many of the Affinity authors, is that I know that I would be comfortable working with any one of you. And so, yeah.
I want to do a story about a middle-aged witch.
I have a good story about a witch, but not a middle-aged witch.
At some point, I want to do a story about a middle-aged witch that's having the time of her life. It's very random, but I haven't come across it yet.
Okay. All
right. Last question. What is the biggest reward of narration?
For me, I can't really work in any other capacity. I'm housebound and have been completely bedbound at times from my health. And so being able to have a job that I can do at home that also feels meaningful and gives me a way to not only just spend my time, but it's also healing for my brain. It's exciting to be a part of it. And just like acting is something that I've loved for my entire life that I thought was in my past. And so being able to find it again in this new way and to be able to play every single character. Like,
yes.
This is the only format in acting where I would never be cast in so many of these roles in any other situation. So it's really fun to just be able to play every character. And also, a lot of audiobook narrators are writers as well. And when you're just immersed in narrating, I feel like it also impacts your writing and helps you to be a better writer, which I find is another reward that's been really great.
Fantastic.
I would say the exact same thing. I think because I get typecast a lot when I'm doing shows because I have the big voice, and so I always get to play the opera singer. That's fine. I want to play the bad guy. Can I be the bad guy? So I get to be all of them. I get to be the bad guy, the good guy, the guy with a New York accent. I get to be a sassy little Latino, or Latina, whatever. I mean, I love all of the different things. And sometimes I even get to speak some German and French and Italian and show that off, So having creative license for the whole kit and caboodle is, I never want to direct a show. I don't want to control other people. I like that. It's really expanded I really think it's helped me grow as an actor so much.
Right.
I would say the same thing about like all of it, because it's hard for me to work, and for a lot of different reasons. Some of them are medical and some of them are, just lifestyle situation. I have to take care of people, and it's very difficult to work around normal hours. Performing and telling somebody's story and bringing it to life is so satisfying. It's one of the most satisfying things I have ever encountered. And it started with my words, and now doing it with other people's, it feels the same. It feels just as satisfying. So those are my favorite things.
I have to go get my dog. So I'm very sorry if I have to dip out early. but I guess if I were to answer this question, I mean, obviously my experience is limited, but I mean, I really enjoy it, so it brings me joy, but also hope that it brings the listeners joy. And also like I just think every story is important, you know. So it's just great to be able to bring that just to life in a different way and accessible to more people that way. So yeah, that's just my experience thus far.
Before you leave, Clark, really quick request for everybody is if you're not a friend of Annette Mori Facebook, if you could friend me so that way I can share the video on your Facebook page.
Oh, of course, great.
Same here with Allie Spooner.
And thank you for letting me hop on late and leave early and accommodating my dog.
I'm glad she's going to be okay.
What's your name?
Yes.
What's your dog's name?
Tinka. She is she'll be 15 next month. She's a dachshund. She's wonderful and chaotic.
Cool.
And I love her very much.
It's
Thank
nice
you for
to meet
joining
you,
us,
Clark.
Clark.
It was nice to meet
Same
all
to
of
you,
you.
Clark.
Just waving and bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now, I know that we've asked y'all a lot of questions. Do you have questions for Annette or I?
You guys have been so wonderful.
How do you write so fast, Allie?
I'd like to know the answer to that.
I get in binges. You know, sometimes I'll dream about something or I see something that triggers a story, and it's just like I can't do anything else until I get it out. And you know, Annette and I are pretty competitive. We have challenges. We've collaborated on many things, and you know, we've written stuff together enough to know that okay, she's already working on one chapter. She's going to have that to me in a day or two. So let me go ahead and start working on the next one. And it's worked for us. We've done, I think, some good books together. But it's just pure joy for me, you know, and be able to take an idea and spin it and you know come out with a decent product is just. You know, I'll go sometimes I'll take a break and won't write for 2 months. And then it's just like physically, I feel like I need to do something. I need to write. And so I'll just sit down and there's probably 5 open stories on my laptop right now. And whichever characters talk the loudest is the ones I usually finish the first.
Or if I prod her.
Yeah. Yeah, so many of my short stories really were going to be short stories until I shared them with Annette. I want more. I want more. I want more. So they turned into novellas or novels. So I'm going to blame that on.
I have a funny story for you, Allie. So many of your books are set in the South and the Deep South. And there are certain things some of your characters say. And I was like, no human says that. I work with someone who talks like that. She says all of those things all the time. And I remember reading one of the reviews. It was a mean review about it. And I was like, you clearly have never been to the South.
Yeah.
If you know, I mean, it was really, it's so funny. Every time my boss talks, I'm like, oh my God, she's channeling Allie.
Don't read the reviews.
Yeah.
They help me sometimes.
Yeah, there's some pretty good criticism out there, and it helps us grow as writers, and I'm sure it does as narrators as well. But some people just can take it beyond where it needs to go.
I would say, fuck them.
Sometimes you find those people, and what you do is you go back and read their other reviews of other things, and you realize the only thing they do is find something to complain about.
Yeah. So you have to have a thick skin, and
you do have to have a thick skin.
Yeah. By the time we hit the final edit process, I mean, I feel comfortable that it's as good as we can make it. Yeah. And you're not going to please everybody, but I think we've got a good readership that enjoys the types of stories that we create, and that's what I'm going to continue to create for.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do for you as narrators? Like you were asking us what we need from you. What do you need from us?
Information. You know, let us know what we can do to help you create a better story. You know, I think the info fact sheet is a good start, but there's some things that you may need that we haven't gotten captured on that. So, we're very easy to work with. So just let us know what you need, because we want you to succeed as much as we want to succeed.
Yeah, how to make it easier for you. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that Heidi, when she commented on the fact that she liked when I would put the time, or she asked for it, and I was like, oh yeah, where that correction is. I mean, instead of having to go through the whole the whole file to look for it. And so now I just have a spreadsheet where I,
You're all fancy.
What chapter, where it's what point, 1452 or wherever in that chapter, and then what was recorded versus what should have been recorded. And for me, I honestly don't sweat the small stuff anymore. If there's something that's recorded that isn't exactly what was written, but it doesn't really make any difference, it's not important, I just blow by that now. I've learned to say, hey, you know what? I don't have to be that OCD or that picky. The only time I will note something is if something's completely missing, or if the word is so different, or the name or whatever, that it's not what's intended. That's the only time that I'll actually correct things now. But I think I started off being pickier and then decided, well, this thing right here doesn't make a difference to the story. So why do I care whether it's the same as written or not?
Yeah.
I don't think I have gotten a single correction from Allie that made my eyes roll. Like every single time you've reached out and been like, excuse me, I've been like, oh yes, you are correct. So sorry.
I concur.
I have worked with other authors that sometimes send stuff, and I'm like,
well, and listening to you guys, we do trust you.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, with the exception of pecans and Mobile, what you do is, it sounds better than what we envisioned. Yeah. So we go roll with it. This is your acting. Yeah. You're telling of the story. You bringing our words to life in a way that I certainly couldn't do.
I had this very, very sweet, this other publisher, I was recording the book, and I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the line, I belched right in the middle of the file. And I thought I took it out, and I didn't. I swear I did. Something funky must have happened with it. Anyways, she sends me this note back, and she's like, I have been trying to figure out how that fits in here. And I was like, what is she talking about? So I listened to it. I'm like, oh my God. How kind of her to think that was an acting choice.
Yeah.
That's a lot of trust. That is so much trust.
That is a lot of trust. That's hysterical. Oh my God, this is so funny.
Amazing on so many levels.
That should have been a funny stories to share.
Yes,
I know. I just remembered it now.
There you go. Yeah.
That was so good. Aww.
I find the biggest thing about narrating too is we learn real quick if we learned our vocabulary through reading.
Yep.
And because there are words that I have said in my head one way for 55 years that I, through narration, have learned is very, very wrong.
Paradigm.
Oh yes, that exact word, paradigm. I actually got a note about that from the first book that I did, and he's like, it's pronounced paradigm, and I'm like, I know that. I do. I swear I knew that, and I had to go back in and surgically remove that word and put the right one in. It is seamless. You cannot tell. I did like a little party for a second because it is so, when you get the audio edit and it's like you cut that word in and nobody can tell the difference. God couldn't tell the difference. It was a good feeling. I was so embarrassed though. Paradigm.
Cacophony gets a lot of people too.
Yeah. Sometimes you all write these sentences that have if they're just a tongue twister, you don't mean it to be a tongue twister.
Right.
I do it. I have to put it down. I have to practice and practice and practice. And then I try and say it, I'm like, good Lord.
And sometimes I find it's way more obvious when you're reading a book who's speaking, but then when you go to narrate the book, you have to stop and be like, "Wait a
Yes.
minute." Like I
Who's talking?
understand the gist of this entire paragraph, and I understand the point and like what's happening, but who's actually saying that line?
Or
And
if the character is like quoting something with air quotes and you can't distinguish between, Allie and I had that problem. You can't
Right.
distinguish between the character quoting somebody and them actually saying it. And then you get kind of dicey and you have to go, how do you distinguish between quotes and the character speaking?
Exactly.
Or thoughts. I bet you thoughts are probably difficult because,
Yes.
you know, we put thoughts in italics, and, you know, as writers, you always say, you always say that it's not necessary to say she thought or whatever. Whereas, you know, at least you have some help when you're listening to books and the narrators narrating when you have either action beats or dialogue tags to tell you who's
yes
speaking.
and no, though, because I think sometimes it's a very subtle acting nuance to make it obvious that somebody is thinking or it's in quotes.
Yeah.
You could get to I want to say the word pandering, and that's not the word I mean. But like tick tock, like if you're she said, she thought, like and then when you listen back to the paragraph, you're like, oh, that doesn't sound right either.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I think you guys do a really good job, though, as authors of finding the middle ground on that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Yeah, you know, so I listened to somebody who said as you know, narrators sometimes will drop the dialogue tags because they're not necessary. And I would say that takes great skill to distinguish between the different voices. But there's, you know, there are times when you write in a certain voice, you probably don't need the dialogue tag because you know it's that voice, whatever you write. That character is so clear. The way you've written that character versus another character are so clear. But you know, I don't know that I'm that talented, to be honest, that I write my characters so clear that they're distinguished, that you don't need the dialogue tags. Who knows? But
that's why I'm still taking acting classes.
Yeah. Never stop learning.
Yeah.
Well,
For my main character, sorry.
Go ahead, Kelly. Or Danielle.
For my main characters, I'll usually give them two voices. So one is an external voice and one is an internal voice. And it's just like a little bit calmer and quieter for the internal so that you can hear a little bit more that it's a thought.
Oh, that's a great idea.
That is a great idea.
I think there's sorry, Ellie. I think there's a challenge with, especially when you have all female characters.
Yeah.
It's, you know, with the tags, you can't just say, she said, you have to say, you know, Lori said, and blah, blah, blah said. And, you know, and I do try and distinguish my characters as well. Just like Danielle, I try and make sure they're different enough so that when they're having a conversation, you don't get so interrupted by she said, or whatever. But, and that's our job, is to, you know, tell that story.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's got to be challenging, though. You know.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm trying to do, because we're getting into some of our older backlist books, and it's like, holy shit, that chapter was 36 minutes long. To do something shorter, so you don't have billions of minutes, you know, developing that. So I'm trying to write shorter chapters, more chapters, but shorter chapters.
Yeah.
Shorter chapters are so much faster to edit, which makes it nicer.
Yeah.
The longer the chapter is, the more each single edit like draws it out.
Well,
in the software.
That's good to know. I think I do, not always, but I think maybe my older books have longer chapters, but my newer books I think have have shorter chapters. But oh my gosh, I feel for you, Heidi, because the organization series has so many different characters.
So many.
Drive you wild. I did do a chart though.
I did. It was great. It was super helpful. Oh yeah. It was extremely helpful. But yeah, I think I lost my train of thought. But the shorter chapters, do you feel a little more accomplished when, like in some days I can get like 5 chapters and I'm like, yeah, but if you have a really long chapter, it's like 1.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
I know.
We're working on it, okay?
You're doing
well, that's good to know.
Yeah, it's
We're
great.
learning. Yeah.